Did you know that there are foods that thousands of older adults eat every single day, believing they are making healthy choices, but that may be silently wearing down their kidneys little by little? And I'm not talking about rare ingredients or exotic dishes. I'm talking about common, everyday foods that many people over the age of 60 consume regularly with complete confidence, without imagining what they may be doing inside their bodies. In my experience as a nephrologist, I have seen the same pattern over and over again. People come to my office saying, "Doctor, my legs are more swollen than usual." "Doctor, I feel bloated all the time." "Doctor, my energy is gone, and I don't know why." "Doctor, my kidney numbers are getting worse and I haven't changed anything." And often it's not just age. Behind these changes are foods that may be overloading the kidneys with excess minerals, forcing them to work harder than they should, creating inflammation in delicate tissue, or straining a system that was already working at its limit without the person noticing. And this is the most dangerous part. The symptoms don't always seem to be related to the kidneys. They are confused with normal tiredness, with water retention from the heat, with just getting older, with things related to age. But they are not always that. That's why I want you to pay close attention today. In this video, I'm going to explain 5 types of foods that are widely consumed and are increasingly being monitored in older adults because of their impact on the kidneys. And I'm going to do it as many subscribers have asked me to, being specific about which foods and ingredients to watch for so you can clearly identify what we're talking about. This is not about scaring you or telling you to eliminate entire food groups on your own. It's about information and awareness, about understanding what's going on inside your body, so you can make better choices at the table and talk to your doctor more clearly. And stay with me because the last of these foods is one of the most commonly consumed by older adults, and also one of the most harmful to the kidneys when eaten without awareness, especially when combined with certain medications or health conditions. Now, let's get straight to the countdown. Food number 5. Food number 5. Processed meats and cold cuts. This one tends to surprise almost everyone because these foods are convenient, widely available, and seem like a simple way to add protein to meals. When I talk about this type of food, I am referring to common items such as deli ham, bacon, sausages, hot dogs, and salami. These foods are eaten at breakfast, in sandwiches, and as quick snacks, and many older adults consume them daily without a second thought. Some doctors even recommend increasing protein intake, which leads people to reach for these convenient options. The problem is that the kidneys do not always respond well to what these foods contain. In recent years, it has been observed more and more frequently that these foods, when consumed regularly, create a triple burden on the kidneys. First, they contain extremely high levels of sodium, often more than a third of the daily limit in just a few slices. Second, they contain phosphate additives used as preservatives that are absorbed much more readily than natural phosphorus. Third, they often contain nitrates and other compounds that can promote inflammation. I have seen older adults who come to the clinic with rising blood pressure, increasing creatinine levels, and progressive fluid retention, and when we review their diet, something in common appears. They have been eating processed meats every day for years, at breakfast, at lunch, without realizing the cumulative load on their kidneys. In addition, the high sodium in these foods forces the kidneys to work overtime to maintain fluid balance. And when the kidneys are already functioning below their peak, that constant demand begins to take its toll. This manifests as puffiness, elevated blood pressure, and that persistent feeling of being bloated, symptoms that are often attributed to age when in fact they have another cause. Now, this does not mean that these foods must be completely eliminated. In many cases, an occasional serving causes no harm. The problem arises when they become automatic, when they are eaten out of habit and convenience rather than conscious choice. In consultation, it is often enough to substitute fresh cuts of meat, explore other protein sources, and reduce reliance on packaged convenience foods, so that the kidneys no longer have to filter that daily burden. And when that happens, blood pressure stabilizes and the kidneys work with less strain. And stay with me, because if this common and widely accepted food can affect the kidneys when consumed without control, the next one is even more common in the daily life of older adults, and its impact on the kidneys often goes completely unnoticed. Food number 4. Restaurant and packaged foods high in hidden sodium. This food category is so common that many older adults don't even consider it a concern. It's eaten for convenience, for enjoyment, for social occasions, or simply because cooking has become more difficult and prepared foods are easier to manage. When I talk about hidden sodium, I'm referring to foods like canned soups, frozen dinners, restaurant meals, bread, condiments such as soy sauce and ketchup, and even foods that taste sweet rather than salty. These foods provide convenience and flavor, and when consumed occasionally, they seem harmless. The problem arises when they become regular parts of the diet without awareness of what they actually contain. The kidney is the organ that most directly feels the effects of excess sodium. Every time sodium enters the body, the kidneys must work to maintain the delicate balance of fluids and minerals. And in an older adult, that balance is much more fragile than it seems. I have seen many cases in which the person notices more swelling in the evening. They wake up with puffy eyes, feel their rings getting tighter, notice their shoes fitting differently, and do not relate this to what they ate. They think it's their age, but often the kidneys are struggling to process a sodium load they cannot handle efficiently. When the body retains too much sodium, it holds onto water to dilute it, and when that happens, blood volume increases. Blood pressure rises, and the heart and kidneys must work harder. The kidneys filter this excess over and over, and it doesn't hurt. There are no obvious warning signs, but over time, their function gradually begins to decline. In addition, many packaged foods contain not just sodium, but also phosphate additives. And when the kidneys cannot clear excess phosphorus efficiently, it begins to accumulate, pulling calcium from bones and contributing to vascular stiffness. Signs that are often minimized until the problem is already advanced. In my practice, this is something I see very often. The person believes they are eating reasonably well because they don't add salt at the table, but they don't realize that most of the sodium in their diet comes from foods that were prepared by someone else. The restaurant meal that seemed reasonable, the convenient frozen dinner, the canned soup that was easy to heat, they all add up. That doesn't mean prepared foods should be completely avoided. It means awareness must be increased, choices must be made carefully, and labels must be read. Because when consumed without such care, hidden sodium can become a silent burden on aging kidneys. I always explain to my patients that home cooking with fresh ingredients, even simple meals, is one of the kindest things they can do for their kidneys. It's not about eliminating convenience entirely, but about finding the right balance so that the kidneys don't have to work too hard. It is also essential to check nutrition labels and aim for foods with less than 600 milligrams of sodium per serving, even when everything seems fine, because the kidneys don't complain until they are already tired. And pay attention, because the next food is not eaten for convenience or as a main dish. It is consumed for something that millions of older adults consider healthy, almost virtuous, but which, if consumed without awareness, can accelerate kidney deterioration more than many people realize. Food number 3. Certain fruits and vegetables high in potassium. Food number 3. High potassium fruits and vegetables consumed in excess. This one usually generates a lot of resistance when I mention it, because most people see fruits and vegetables as the safest, healthiest options. They're natural, they're recommended by every health guideline, they're associated with longevity, and that's precisely why they are consumed so freely. When I talk about high potassium foods, I am mainly referring to bananas, oranges, potatoes, tomatoes, spinach, avocados, and dried fruits. Foods that many older adults eat every day, believing they are making the healthiest possible choice. The problem is not an occasional serving. The problem arises when these foods are consumed multiple times daily, sustained over months or years, especially in someone whose kidneys are no longer filtering as efficiently as they once did. Although potassium is essential for heart and muscle function, what few people know is that in older adults with reduced kidney function, the body's ability to clear excess potassium becomes compromised, and this can happen silently. I have seen people who eat a banana at breakfast, drink orange juice, have a salad with tomatoes and avocado at lunch, and have potatoes at dinner thinking they are doing everything right. But when the kidneys can no longer clear potassium efficiently, that mineral begins to accumulate, and the consequences can be serious. In addition, there is something very important that is often overlooked. Many older adults take blood pressure medications that also raise potassium levels. ACE inhibitors, ARBs, and certain diuretics can all affect how the body handles this mineral. And without realizing it, people end up creating dangerously high levels from the combination of diet and medication. In my practice, when I review in detail what an older adult is actually eating, I sometimes discover that they are consuming 3, 4, or even 5 high potassium foods every single day. And when I point this out, the reaction is usually the same. "Doctor, I thought fruits and vegetables were always good for me." When potassium levels rise too high, the heart can be affected. Irregular heartbeats, muscle weakness, and in severe cases, dangerous cardiac events can occur. And often, the early warning signs, fatigue, weakness, numbness, or tingling, are attributed to aging rather than diet. Now, that doesn't mean that produce should be avoided or that these foods should be feared. It means that variety matters, portions matter, and awareness of total daily intake matters. In many cases, I have seen significant improvements when patients choose lower potassium alternatives: apples instead of bananas, green beans instead of potatoes, berries instead of oranges. The body of an older adult does not need perfect nutrition to be forcibly achieved through high potassium superfoods. It needs balance and awareness. Foods that nourish without overloading the organs that filter and clean the blood. And be careful, because the next food is not eaten for health or nutrition. It is consumed for enjoyment, for habit, and for social connection. And its impact on the kidneys is often completely underestimated. Food number 2. Sweetened beverages and excessive sugar consumption. This food is almost never associated with the kidneys. It is consumed for pleasure, for energy, to accompany meals, to satisfy a sweet tooth. And that is why many older people consume it daily without questioning it. When I talk about these foods, I am referring to sodas, sweetened juices, sweet tea, flavored coffee drinks, desserts, pastries, and the hidden sugars in countless processed foods. These items provide momentary pleasure and energy and can seem harmless in moderation. The problem arises when they become a fixed part of daily consumption. In older adults, excess sugar is not processed in the same way as in younger people. Metabolism is slower, insulin sensitivity is often reduced, and the kidneys have less capacity to handle the downstream effects of high blood sugar. This means that over time, the body begins to experience cumulative damage. I have seen older adults who begin to feel more fatigued, more thirsty, urinating more frequently, with unexplained weight changes and a constant feeling of not being well. And often, diet is not considered the cause because people assume the problem is age, but there is something even more delicate at play. High sugar intake promotes inflammation throughout the body and can damage the delicate blood vessels that supply the kidneys. And when that damage accumulates over years, the kidneys begin to suffer in silence. In addition, sweetened beverages often replace water, leading to inadequate hydration with pure fluids. That combination of more metabolic stress, more inflammation, and less pure hydration is especially dangerous for aging kidneys. In consultation, when we calmly review their cases, many patients are surprised to discover that they have been drinking 2 or 3 sweetened beverages daily for years without anyone asking about their consumption or connecting it to their kidney health. I always explain something very important. Enjoying food is part of life. but pleasure should not come at the expense of organ health. In many cases, small changes in beverage choices, choosing water with lemon, unsweetened tea, or simply reducing portion sizes of desserts, can significantly reduce the burden on the kidneys. There are also satisfying alternatives that, when properly chosen, can provide enjoyment without that cumulative inflammatory effect. But even natural sugars should be consumed judiciously and with awareness. And before we continue, let me make a quick invitation. Subscribe if you like the video, because we're talking about information that isn't always clearly explained, and that can make a big difference to your long-term health. And now, pay close attention, because food number 1 is probably the most common, the most accepted, and the one that almost no one dares to question. And when it is consumed in excess over the years, it can become one of the main contributors to kidney deterioration in older adults. Food number 1: excessive protein, especially from red meat and certain supplements. This is undoubtedly one of the most commonly consumed categories for older adults. It is eaten at every meal, often in large portions, and is usually seen as absolutely necessary for maintaining strength and muscle mass. And in many cases, it is important. The problem is not protein itself, the problem is quantity and source. When I talk about this category, I'm referring to large portions of red meat, protein shakes, protein bars, and the general tendency to prioritize protein above all other nutrients in the belief that more is always better. Protein is essential for maintaining muscle and preventing frailty, but it also directly influences how hard the kidneys must work. The kidneys are responsible for filtering the waste products of protein metabolism, and in older adults with declining kidney function, excess protein creates additional strain. I have seen people come to my office saying, "Doctor, I feel sluggish after meals. Doctor, my stomach is always uncomfortable. Doctor, my kidney tests keep getting worse. Doctor, I don't understand because I'm eating healthy." And often, upon closer examination, their protein intake far exceeds what their kidneys can comfortably process. The steak that seemed like a healthy choice, the protein shake for strength, the emphasis on meat at every meal. When the intake exceeds what the kidneys can handle efficiently, the damage accumulates. When the kidneys are overloaded with protein waste products, they must work harder. And kidneys that are already functioning below their peak cannot sustain that increased workload indefinitely. It doesn't hurt, it doesn't warn you, but function begins to decline little by little, test after test.